In the Quran, through the story of Lot, homosexuality is condemned, and 4 of the 5 major schools of Islamic law think it should be punishable by death. In fact, 24 countries where Islam is the state religion have criminal penalties for homosexuality. 8 of them is punishable by death. That's in Afghanistan, Iran, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Yemen. They kill you for being gay.
Where does it say in the Quran or the teaching of the Prophet Muhammad that someone who is homosexual or gay should be executed?
You don't need to convince me, mate. You need to convince the 8 Islamic countries that are killing them, the people who are being thrown off rooftops. Go have your argument with Hamas. Go have your argument with ISIS. You don't need to convince me.
Hey, everyone. So I'm still in the U.S. My son and I are going to be traveling back to Israel over the course of the next couple days. We're almost done with our trip, sleeping in a different bed every night. And it's been a very, very interesting trip. And I want to show you a clip from the Oxford Union debates. Tommy Robinson was arguing the motion, the West is correct, is right to be suspicious of Islam. That was the proposition that he was arguing. And normally when I would show you a clip of a debate, it's because I want to show you what is being said in it, meaning I would be reacting to what Tommy said. And I'm going to react a little bit to what Tommy said, but that's not really the point I want to make in this video. It's not why I'm making it. Because what I want to focus on in this clip is the people who are interrupting him and what they're saying. Because if you watch closely, and I mean closely, because it moves fast, the people who are trying to shut him down are going to be making 2 arguments in the space of a few minutes that cannot both be true at the same time. First, they're going to demand that he prove that his claims come straight from the Islamic texts, from the Quran. And then a few minutes later, when he shows them behavior that is coming straight from the Quran and cites the Quran, and the behavior being in the name of Islam, they're going to flip the standard and say that that's not real Islam. And the text doesn't count unless it's being practiced, and practice doesn't count unless it's textual. Whatever, watch for it. I'll stop the clip and I'll explain it as it happens. There's also a moment where one of the people interrupting him is going to invoke Jewish law as a way of defending Islam, as a comparison to Jewish law, and it doesn't defend Islam, and I'll explain exactly why when we get there, because there's an honest way to approach the Jewish law argument, and Tommy doesn't deal with it. Not that he should deal with it. He actually dealt with it in the right way. It was not relevant to this debate, but we'll see that as well. So I'm going to be pausing this clip a few times. And yeah, let's get to it. Now, I didn't start the clip of Tommy speaking in the Oxford debates. We're not playing the entire thing. I left out the first few minutes. He was kind of introduction and saying some things that aren't relevant to the points I want to make. But let's take a look at Tommy. So let me pull this up on screen. Here we go. Add to stage, and the clip, here it is.
But anyway, let's look for some common ground. Okay, that's what we want to find. I've seen how this works, Andrew, so I'll take as many questions as you want at the end. I'm just going to finish my speech. How many of you in here are gay? You don't actually need to put your hands up, okay? In the Quran, through the story of Lot, homosexuality is condemned, and 4 of the 5 major schools of Islamic law think it should be punishable by death. Maybe I'm going to finish my speech. In fact, 24 countries where Islam is the state religion have criminal penalties for homosexuality. 8 of them is punishable by death. So while we're on the, maybe if you're gay, you might maybe be a little bit suspicious of this. That's in Afghanistan, Iran, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Yemen. They kill you for being gay. Who's protesting about this? When these countries, state legislators or governments visit our country, who protests? Awa, I'd just love to finish with you.
Point of order has been raised. President.
As per discussions with previous speakers, we did agree that we would take points of information from fellow speaker, guests, and audience members. If you can respect that as part of a constructive debate, it would be very much appreciated.
Thank the President for that point of order. Mr. Robinson, I think the idea that the President's putting across is...
Hear the question first.
Take a question every now and then. Take a question every now and then, please. Thank you.
Can we at least agree killing people because they are homosexuals is never okay? It was never okay then, and it's not okay now. Now, I'll have to listen, won't I? I'll see how this works.
Where does it say in the Quran or the teaching of Prophet Muhammad that someone who is homosexual or gay should be executed?
You don't need to convince me, mate. You need to convince the 8 Islamic countries that are killing them, the people who are being thrown off rooftops. Go have your argument with Hamas, go have your argument with ISIS. You don't need to convince me. Now, please, if I can just finish. Again, let's talk about sex, okay? How many of you have had sex since you got here? I want to see your hands up. I knew that was coming, right? You see, the Quran prescribes 100 lashes for the male and the female involved in what Islam considers illegal sexual intercourse. That's the Quran 24:2. But Islamic scholars have gone all in on this issue, yeah? Not just lashing, all schools of Islamic law prescribe death by stoning if a person is married. And the Shia school, Jafari, prescribes 100 lashes before you're stoned to death. So maybe, if you think no one believes in this, if you think no one believes in this barbaric stuff, in 2023, the head imam of the Green Lane Mosque, the head imam, you can watch this video, actually gives a seminar to his congregation on how we keep the modesty of the woman before we smash rocks at her head. So you see, she has to be buried up to a certain level to preserve her modesty.
Kind of information. Is what you are discussing not abuse of Islamic scripture, not actually what is discussed in the Islamic scripture? Give me examples from Islamic scripture in Islamic law, not cherry-picked examples that have been taken out of context. Give me examples from the verses of the Quran that back up your arguments.
Okay, let's pause it there for the first pause. The standard being set right now by the room is show us that it's really textually authoritatively in there, not somebody misreading, not what this imam said, right? It's a completely fair standard, by the way. It's how you should argue a religious text. I just want you to remember this, that this is the bar that's just been set, and we're about to watch it move. Okay, let's keep going with this clip.
Should the lady, the simple question is, should the gay person who was thrown off the rooftop have been suspicious? Should the lady buried into the ground having rocks smashed at her head, which is the law which I'll get to?
Does it matter what the Quran says when Muslims do not practice it? Does it matter when the Muslims who are professing exactly what you just said are the ones who are saying?
Yep. Now, 25 countries where Islam is the state religion have criminal penalties for sex outside of marriage. 9 of them is punishable by death. So again, no one needs to have this argument with me. You don't need to convince me, okay? You don't need to convince me. Again, who's protesting about this? Can we at least agree as a room? Can we look for some common ground with the Muslim community? Stoning people for having sex outside of marriage is never okay. It was never okay. It's not okay then, and it's not okay now.
Since Jewish law says the same thing,
I'm not here to talk about Jewish law.
Should we be suspicious of Jewish law equally? Will you be consistent, sir?
That's not the question we're here for. If you want to have that question debate, have it. Yeah? Can we at least agree with the Muslim community? Okay, in modern Britain, where you're preaching to what now 4 million Muslims, we can just put a line through the verses in the Quran, yeah, the parts of Islam's sacred text that says these things are not okay. They're not practiced now. They weren't okay then, and they're not okay now. Can we meet in the middle somewhere and have you accept the verses in the Quran today?
Will you demand that Orthodox Jews put lines through the Tanakh? Will you be the Orthodox Jews put line through the Tanakh as you are requesting Muslims to do?
I think you're confused at which debate you're at, okay, and the motion of this debate. Now,
Tommy has a point that I mean, he handles this right because it's not the subject of the debate, but I want to address this issue because I am a rabbi and I can actually address this issue. And both sides in that exchange are kind of half right. It's true that the Torah does prescribe death for some of these same offenses. Tommy's, and this guy who interrupts Tommy is not wrong that it's in there, but here's what is missing. Judaism has an entire legal tradition, the oral Torah, the rabbinic tradition, whose authorities have the standing. Now, this is Jewish law. I'm not, there's a lot of Christians. I do a lot of Jewish-Christian relations, and one of the things that Christians are kind of like unclear about Judaism and sometimes makes them a bit uncomfortable is this rabbinic law, and they see it as unbiblical. And that's not what I'm talking about here, because this is what this person is saying is this is Jewish law states these things. Now, what is Jewish law? Judaism. I practice Judaism. What is Jewish law? So according to Jewish law, we follow rabbinic law. We follow an oral tradition, an oral rabbinic interpretation. And according to that rabbinic tradition, the rabbinic authorities have the standing to interpret and limit how biblical laws apply, and they use it. And for a larger discussion about, how this works and why it's valid and why it's in line with the Bible, that's a far bigger discussion than this video. But we're talking about Jewish law, because what that interrupter, what that heckler or whatever, the person who interrupted Tommy said was, well, Jewish law has the same thing and as Islamic law has, so it's use the same standard. Let me explain. The Mishnah. The Mishnah is a very early text of Jewish law, authoritative text of Jewish law from the 2nd century. And even all the way back then in the 2nd centuries, like, I don't know, what is it, 400 years, 500 years before Islam, it records the sages, the Jewish sages, saying that a rabbinic court that carries out an execution, a capital punishment, even once in 70 years is considered a bloody tribunal. And what the rabbis did was they built all sorts of procedural requirements, the standard for witnesses, the standard for warnings, specifically so that the death penalty would basically never be actually carried out. Now, again, why this is okay with when the Bible has death penalties for things, that's a bigger discussion. But this is ancient rabbinic law on the books for 2,000 years. Now compare that to what Tommy's actually citing. 4 of the 5 major schools of Islamic jurisprudence still treated today as live, authoritative sources of law by real governments enforcing real penalties in our time. There's no equivalent rabbinic mechanism operating inside Sunni or Shia legal theory the way it operates inside Jewish law. So Jewish law says the same thing is actually incorrect, and it's a deflection because it swaps out the question that Tommy's raising. Remember, this debate is about should people in the West be suspicious of Islam? Because the question is this currently treated as operative law by an authoritative tradition in the religion? And for Islam, the answer is yes. And for Judaism, the law that guy brings up, that Judaism also has death penalty for adultery, is not considered operative law by our authoritative tradition anymore. It's on the books in a certain way, but the rabbinic law makes it inoperative. Again, I don't want to get into why that's valid and why the rabbis have the authority to do that. That's a different discussion. So what they're doing here, it's a deflection play, because Tommy's raising the fact that this is considered operative by much of Islam today, and it's being deflected by the questioner by saying, hey, in the ancient Jewish texts, we see the same thing. That's a deflection. Those are different questions. And the honest answer is the ancient texts are comparable, but the practiced interpreted tradition as it's practiced today is not. And notice the second round of it a few seconds later. Will you demand that the Orthodox Jews put lines through the Tanakh? Same move, same answer. Orthodox Jews haven't needed to cross out a word of the Tanakh because their own legal tradition already did the interpretive work centuries ago. It's not evasion. That's the actual on-the-record difference between the two traditions and between the two traditions' relationships to their own sacred texts. Okay, let's get back to the clip, and we'll play the next piece of it. Here we go.
Let's turn to good old Muhammad, okay? According to Islam's sacred text, an exalted example of moral excellence. Well, in 2014, ISIS, again, because this is important, because they're following scripture, ISIS, when they captured Yazid...
Sorry? Ask any Muslim whether they believe ISIS is following Islamic scripture, and you will find that no Muslim agrees that they are actually Islamic.
Okay, you hear what she's saying. Ask any Muslim if they believe that ISIS is following Islamic scripture, and they will say that ISIS is not Islamic. Okay. That's the flip I told you to watch for. 90 seconds ago, the standard in the room was prove it's really textually there. Prove that it's in the Quran. Fine. Now Tommy's about to do exactly that. He's about to cite a Sahih Muslim, one of the most authoritative hadith collections in Sunni Islam, describing Muhammad presiding over the execution of these prisoners, these Jewish prisoners, the Banu Qurayza prisoners. Real text, real citation. And the second he connects it to real world practice, what ISIS did to Yazidi men in 2014, which he's going to discuss in a moment, the standard will change. Now it's no true Muslim believes that that's Islamic, that practice doesn't count either. Okay, well, let's listen to that piece of the clip, and then we'll evaluate. Okay, so here we go. Let's go back to the clip. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Once again.
Let me ask you a question.
I'm sorry, Madam President.
Can I just finish
think
my
the point
speech?
has been made. You must allow the speaker to continue.
In 2014, ISIS captured Yazidi men and boys. And what they'd done is they pulled their pants down. They surrendered. They pulled their pants down. Anyone who had any pubic hair was shot in the head, and some of them had their heads cut off with knives. You can watch the videos if you want online, yeah? Okay? They were following the example of Muhammad, who, according to Islam's own sacred text, presided over the execution of up to 900 men and boys, which was the Jewish tribe who had surrendered, and any male prisoner who had pubic hair was executed. That is what the practice that the Muslims in 2014 were following. This is why scripture is important, and then why we must be suspicious. Now, consider the fact, I'll just finish, please. Consider the fact that there are no Jews, none, in any of the 26 countries where Islam is a state religion. Countries which once held thriving Jewish communities. This is not an accident, and there are precious few Christians in any of these Islamic countries either, that once had majority Christian populations. You see, one way or another, these countries are following the example of Muhammad. I will certainly expel the Jews and Christians. Excuse me, can I just finish? I will certainly expel the Jews and Christians from the Arabian Peninsula and will not leave any but Muslim. That's a quote of Muhammad, Sahih Muslim. Sahih being the authentic, considered most authentic hadith. Please, can I just finish?
Wonderful. Thank you. On the point.
Sorry. You don't have to accept. No, okay, so.
Okay, let's pause there and comment, because we just heard a lot. Okay. So this whole thing, remember, she started this interruption before this last piece by saying, ask any Muslim if what ISIS is doing is Islamic, and they'll say that ISIS does not represent true Islam. Right? So the question is, which is it? If practice is what counts, then you don't get to wave off what ISIS is doing by disputing the text. If text is what counts, then you don't get to wave off the text by pointing at what most Muslims actually do. You can't run both objections in the same conversation depending on which one gets you out of the example that's being presented. It's a deflection play. It's not a real rebuttal. It's a moving standard where you choose which way to apply, which argument to apply depending on what argument you're about to lose. And here's what makes the no Muslim agrees that ISIS is actually Islamic argument ring so hollow. Where's the authoritative declaration? Al-Azhar University, Al-Azhar, the seminary in Cairo, it's the closest thing that Sunni Islam has to a Vatican, right? That kind of authority, a 1,000-year-old seat of religious authority. And when you actually look at what Al-Azhar has said, it undercuts this heckler's line of argument rather than supporting it. Al-Azhar has criticized specific ISIS fatwas, but has explicitly and repeatedly refused to declare ISIS members non-Muslim or apostates on the ground, right, that they've done something that is beyond the pale of Islam. That's Al-Azhar's own stated position. On October 7th, let's take that example. That's maybe even a stronger example. Hamas attack involved deliberate murder of children, rape of women. We all know what happened there. Al-Azhar didn't even do what they did with ISIS, where they condemn specific acts but aren't going to say that they're not Muslim. They went even further. Al-Azhar issued a statement saluting Hamas and calling it saluting what they called, quote, the efforts of resistance of the noble people of Palestine. There was no condemnation. So when she stands up and says, no real Muslim believes that this barbaric stuff is actually Islamic, you don't invoke ISIS. No real Muslim believes that that's Islamic. The honest question, the real pushback to that is, okay, where's the declaration from Al-Azhar or a comparable body stating clearly in public that for the whole world to see that what ISIS did to the Yazidis and what Hamas did on October 7th are violations of Islamic law? We're all still waiting for that. So that's the real response here. Okay, let's play another clip of this.
Of course, put your hands up if you think it's okay for a man older than most of your dads, say in their 50s, to marry someone in infant school, let's say 6 years old, and consummate that marriage, rape, when the little girl reaches 9. By the way, that's year 5 doing key stage 2. Doing key stage 2. No, please, because I know many of you gentlemen should have your hands up at this point, no? We're going to get onto it, but you agree that Muhammad was perfect. As we know, he married a 6-year-old, had sex with her when she was 9. We've previously had this discussion, Do you think children should be suspicious of Islam who are studying key stage 2? Now, please, can I just finish? And of course, can I please finish?
Order.
Please let
Order.
me finish. Yeah? You can get on.
The speaker declined. Please allow the speaker to continue.
And I must mention Quran 65:4, where God, debatable, God spells out the rules for divorcing prepubescent children. Okay? So let me read it. And for those who have no courses, not yet started your periods, who are still immature, their iddah, their waiting period is 3 months. What has happened for a child to be married, and this is the Quran telling you what the rules are and obligations to divorce a child before they've started puberty. Yeah? Can we be suspicious on this question? Is this, no, please, can I finish? And to be honest, I'm just here. I'm the extremist, apparently. Yeah? I'm the extremist for not wanting homosexuals thrown off rooftops, not wanting women buried in the ground, and not wanting children studying key stage 2 to be married and raped. So of the 10 countries with the highest rates of child marriage, 7 of them are Islamic countries. There's no minimum age in Sudan, Somalia, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, because there's no minimum age in Islam. But whatever the stated legal age for marriage is in some Muslim countries, forced marriage of young girls, often to much older men, is prevalent in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, Burkina Faso, Yemen. I could go on and on. UNICEF data shows, for all of you ladies who care about women and children's rights, UNICEF data shows child brides are unlikely to finish education, more likely to believe wife beating is justified, and more likely to have experienced intimate part of violence.
Okay. Now, I want to be consistent about applying scrutiny here, including the side that I agree with here, because, I mean, obviously I'm on Tommy's side of this argument. The Aisha marriage age claim that Muhammad married her at 6 and that consummated the marriage when she was 9 is genuinely disputed territory. It's the most commonly cited figure. It's true, it comes from a hadith. Tommy's not making it up. But there are classical and modern scholars, including some Muslim scholars, who've argued for a significantly older age based on other chronological evidence in the sources, right? So I'm not telling you Tommy invented this. He didn't. I'm telling you that it's the shakiest brick in his argument. Quran 65:4, the Banu Qurayza hadith, the Banu Qurayza hadith is and 65:4 is what he was talking about the divorcing of an underage girl, or not underage, of a girl, a prepubescent girl. The Banu Qurayza hadith is the hadith about the killing of the boys who have pubic hair from this Jewish tribe. The state penal codes and the UN child marriage data that he just shared, those are on firmer ground, right? So if you're going to demand that your opponent sources their claim precisely, hold your own side's favorite clip to the same bar. And let me just say here, look, do you see what's happening? The other side is saying, oh, ISIS is not real Islam. And then they're saying, show me something that's actually from the text. And he's presenting both things. He's showing you in the text, and he's showing you that it's also done. He's showing you that these Muslim states have child marriage en masse, and he's showing you that it's also in the Quran. Okay, let's play to the end now. Just another minute or so left, not even.
Just like to finish, please, guys. I apologise. Can we at least agree? Executing prisoners of war, including young boys, carrying out ethnic cleansing of Jews and Christians from the lands, or marrying and having sex with a little child when Muhammad was 53 years old. Can we at least agree today? Muhammad was not and is not the perfect example for mankind, nor is he an exalted example of moral excellence. Quite the opposite, in fact. Because if we can't agree this, then the West is right to be suspicious of Islam because of what the sacred text says, because of how millions of Muslims interpret the sacred text, because of how Muhammad's life is held up as the perfect example, not back then, but now, for all Muslims to follow. That's the problem. They don't recognize any of the problems and see anything wrong which Muhammad done. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you care about gay rights, if you care about women's rights, if you care about children's rights, if you care about human rights, or if you care about free speech, I urge you to support this motion.
You see there, he said it perfectly. Because of what the text says, and because of how millions of Muslims interpret that text. That's the point. That's the point. Let's go back to the Jewish law point. The text of the Torah has some severe things in it that would seem outdated and barbaric. But the question that matters isn't what's written down in the ancient text. It's who has authority to interpret the text? What do they do with that authority? How is it practiced today? Rabbinic Judaism built a tradition specifically designed to make those penalties inoperative. That's not spin. Okay, that's actually what happened there. No one in Islam, the four schools of Islam of Islamic law that Tommy was mentioning here, none of that has ever happened. And we have state governments and millions of Muslims who are practicing according to those laws. So the fact that there's some people in the room who say, oh, that's not real Islam, it just doesn't fly. Now, there's a bigger point. And it has to do with how you evaluate any argument like this about any religion, any ideology, any country. You have to pick a standard and hold to it. Either you judge a belief system by its authoritative texts, or you judge it by how its adherents actually live. Or honestly, the most reasonable thing is you weigh both together. What you don't get to do, but they're not weighing both together. It's really the opposite of weighing both together. What you don't get to do is invoke whichever standard exonerates the example currently on the table and then drop it the moment it doesn't. That's not principled disagreement, right? It's like a shell game. Once you make them hold one standard, the evidence that Tommy's citing gets harder to explain away because he wasn't resting it on a single cherry-picked line. He's showing what it says in the text. He's showing that there's millions of Muslims who follow that to this day. That's the issue that he's raising here. And if you want proof that no real Muslim believes what ISIS does is Islam, if you want proof that that's a dodge of an argument, look at who actually holds the authority in Islam. Al-Azhar does not call ISIS apostates. Al-Azhar saluted October 7th, and no one in that room could claim Al-Azhar isn't authoritative. Al-Azhar is the authority for Sunni Islam. We're still waiting for a declaration from an institution with real standing globally for Islam that says unambiguously, this is not Islam. Until that happens, the no true Muslim believes this is just a rhetorical assertion from an audience member to get out of the argument. And to be fair, in the other direction, I flagged the Aisha claim as a little bit shaky because the standard has to cut both ways. If we're going to insist that the other side source its accusations precisely, we don't get to waive, to have our own example of something that doesn't hold up, basically. Anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you found it interesting, and let me know in the comments if you want to see more of these where I actually show a clip and pull it apart and discuss this topic. It's not the topic I usually discuss. But yeah, let me know what you thought of this. Let me know what you found, if you found it helpful, if you found it interesting. I'm interested to hear your comments. All right, God bless.